Trans guys and female privileges. Hey, it's Prince of Queens, and today I have a bit of a speculation video because I don't actually want to say I have a ton of experience with this, but I have seen things related to this happen once or twice now, and it's starting to make me think a bit. If we are going to talk about the concept of trans men having female privileges, or being used to having female privileges, it is most responsible to first mention that trans women get accused of having male privilege kind of all the time by fourth wave intersectional feminist social justice warriors these days, which is a pretty weird statement. Trans women having male privilege? What, like the privilege to get their asses beat and killed, like more than anyone? Sure, good one. The justifications are that trans women have male entitlements because of their socialization. So they talk a lot and I guess mansplain or whatever. Even though they are trans women, they're mansplaining. I haven't really heard of any other supposed examples of trans women having male privilege, and I have to say the whole concept sounds pretty suspect to me, obviously, but I can't exclude it as a possibility that occasionally trans women act in certain ways based on male socialization or whatever that make life easier for them in some instances. Maybe. However, the main problem here is that if we really want to talk about real privileges and not just circumstantial moments in which people might benefit from their gender socialization, I honestly think there's far more legitimate privileges for females. Ladies first sounds like a privilege to me. There's female-only spaces in many instances, and there's hiring quotas and enrollment preferences for women very frequently, and lastly, there's the good old privilege of being able to threaten or even attack a man, knowing damn well you can get away with it as long as you're a female. I'm going to skip past all of the first ones because I imagine most of those legitimately do tend to go away when somebody is on testosterone and begins to be perceived as a man for long enough. However, there's something very interesting I was thinking about in regards to this idea of women being immune to violence from men and boys in relation to trans men. You see, trans men are socialized as women with a very severe double standard of behavior in culture where the violence that they commit as women against men is seen as socially acceptable, and that men will never hit them back even if they deserve it, just so long as they are female. So when trans men begin to really look like a cis man to most people, it would be to his benefit to learn quickly that he might get knocked the fuck out if he gets into a conflict with a dude. Here's where it gets weird. Trans men take testosterone, and testosterone is a very powerful chemical. I have heard from numerous sources, including trans guys that I have known, that finding the correct dose of testosterone is incredibly difficult because it only takes a small bit too much for guys to start regularly flying off the handle and getting into arguments. Transgender men end up with too much testosterone altogether too often, especially because a lot of trans men order their hormones illegally. And what does that mean? Well, a lot of them start thinking that they are tough guys and talking shit, basically. I've seen this, even to guys much bigger than them that could easily whoop their asses. However, sometimes, once they realize that a legitimate tough guy might want to fight them, they usually try to find a way out of it. Kind of like most guys, but they do it in different ways. And here's where I think the female privilege thing comes in. These guys forget when they get hyped up that they are a man now. And they can't just play the fragile mating card if they instigate potential violent threats or actual physical confrontations. I've seen trans guys start shit online, and then when somebody is ready to fight them after they already threatened the guy, they'll say that it was a transphobe that was actually threatening them. When really, the trans guy threatened him, and he simply said, "Bring it." It had nothing to do with any anti-trans sentiment. Looked like dude just didn't want to be threatened. I also imagine that sometimes trans guys instigate in-person fights, then get their asses beat, but won't want to admit it, so they'll say they were bashed for being trans. But I don't actually know how often that happens for sure. The closest thing I've heard to that was a trans guy friend of mine who was punched and called a faggot one time, and my friend who was there said it wasn't actually because of homophobia, like our trans guy friend said, but rather because our friend was actually being obnoxious, and the guy who punched him also just happened to call him a faggot around the time that he punched him. So it's hard to say what happened. My point here is basically that trans guys really need to cut this behavior out, not just because it embarrasses your entire community and will not get people to treat trans men seriously as real men on account of it making you seem like spineless bitches, but more so. It's bad for you because if you keep instigating random drama, you'll be unhappy and probably get your ass beat a few times. You're a dude now, as long as you look like a dude. And so you better be careful, or you're gonna get socked like a dude. As for cisgender guys, in terms of dealing with this problem, well, I would say just avoid the hell out of trans men who are feminists. Any person who has made the conscious choice to go from being perceived as a girl to a guy and still identifies as a feminist is already messed in the head. Because who would subject themselves to self-hatred for willingly becoming male besides somebody with serious issues? But since they have that whole massive victim narrative going on, as well as being loaded up on potentially unstable amounts of testosterone, well, leave them to fight with other feminists and don't even waste your energy on them. Trust me, the domestic violence rate between trans men and women that they date, couples that are basically like lesbians, except for one is a trans guy, well, the domestic violence rate is similar to the domestic violence rate for cisgender lesbians, which is sky high. Drop me a comment and stay tuned.